They told me they couldn't afford to take a trip with me. But then I saw them, my parents and my sister's kids, who are also my nieces and nephews, boarding a plane together. I had saved for months, dreaming of a vacation I'd always wanted. I had been browsing travel sites, imagining myself walking cobblestone streets, sipping espresso in quiet cafes, soaking in the beauty of Italy. Every time I got close to booking, something came up: a bill, an emergency, someone in the family needing help. So when I finally clicked confirm and booked my trip, I told no one. It was mine. Something just for me. I was standing in line at the airport, excited and a little anxious, when I heard a familiar voice, my sister, Sarah, shouting at her son, Liam, "Drop your bag. You won't need all that, the seats are huge." I turned my head, breath catching in my throat. There they were, Sarah, my parents, my nieces and nephews, dressed in coordinated vacation outfits, boarding the same flight, the one I paid for entirely, thinking they couldn't afford to travel. For a second, I wondered if I'd gotten it wrong. Maybe they had saved for this too? But then I heard my mother laugh. "Danny was never in our league," she said with a trembling giggle. I swallowed hard, a knot forming in my stomach. Sarah rolled her eyes and joked with the kids. I stood there, stunned, watching them walk past me, completely unaware that I had seen everything. I didn't say a word. I let them board. I let the silence linger. I didn't text, didn't call. Just let it be. When someone asked if I was traveling alone, I nodded. Yes, I was alone, but for the first time, it felt right. That trip to Italy was everything I had imagined. Wandering through ancient ruins, sipping cappuccino while people watching in small squares, standing in front of the Colosseum with a quiet sense of pride. I had made this happen for me. But that night, sitting in my hotel room, gazing out at the sparkling lights from the balcony, I couldn't shake the memory of the airport. That moment stuck with me. It wasn't about the money. It was the realization that they had never seen me, not really. I was the helper, the background, the one who was always there, but never truly noticed. A week after I got back, my phone rang. "Hi, sweetheart," my mom chirped. "How was the trip?" "You sound great," I answered flatly. "It was good." There was a pause. "Listen, your dad and I were hoping you could help out this month. Groceries. Just enough to get by. You know we've always appreciated your help." I chuckled. Not intentionally, but the absurdity of it got to me. "You mean the groceries you picked up on your way home from first class?" Another pause. Then a nervous laugh. "Well, you know Sarah had airline miles. It's not what you think." I didn't respond. I didn't need to. She kept talking, trying to explain away everything. "If we could have taken you, we would have," she said. I stayed quiet. I didn't ask why they lied. I didn't ask why they thought I wouldn't find out. Then came the final straw. "We really need you right now, Danny," she said softly. "You've always been the one we could count on." I shook my head. "Not anymore." 2 days later, Sarah called. At first, I almost didn't answer, but curiosity got the better of me. "Finally picking up your phone?" she snapped. "What? Too good for us now." She sounded irritated, like I had done something wrong. "You're acting like a spoiled brat," she said. "Ever since you got back from that trip, you've been cold." I let her go on. Then, when she paused for breath, I replied calmly, "I've just had enough, Sarah, of paying your bills, of always being the fallback plan." There was a silence. Then her tone shifted, soft and sugary. "Oh, Danny, you know we're going through a hard time. You know how it is." I could almost hear her smile through the phone. "I mean, you don't have kids. You don't have a family. You don't have the same responsibilities. It's different for you." I exhaled slowly. "No, Sarah, What's different is I finally stopped letting you all take advantage of me." Then I hung up. For the first time in my life, I didn't feel guilty about it. Sometimes, peace comes not from fixing what's broken, but from stepping away. Have you ever had to walk away to protect your peace? Share your thoughts in the comments. The next morning, my phone was flooded with missed calls and unread messages. My mom had left several voicemails. "Daniel, I don't understand why you're acting like this," she said in one of them. "We're family, we stick together. You can't just shut us out." More calls came in, some from my parents, others from Sarah. "Come on, it's Sarah," she said in hers, her voice sharp. "You're really going to ignore your own family? You think you're better than us now? Just because you took one little trip?" I didn't answer any of them. Instead, I made myself a cup of coffee and sat alone on my couch. It had been a long time since I felt this alone, and oddly enough, it felt peaceful. By midday, though, the shame spiral began to twist. Another call popped up. I let it go to voicemail again. It was Dad this time. "Danny," he said in a tired voice, "we've got a situation." "The house." I rolled my eyes. Of course. Another situation. Another emergency. I wasn't going to jump to fix it. Not this time. But a part of me, it still cared. A little too much. So I called back. My mom answered. She sighed deeply before saying, "I'm sorry we didn't tell you, but we've been struggling. We're behind on the mortgage." I rubbed the bridge of my nose. "And you didn't think to mention this until now?" "It's not that we didn't want to," she said quickly. "We just didn't want to worry you." I snorted. "Right. But you wanted me to pay for it now?" No, she replied quickly. "We just thought, if you could help a little, just until we're back on our feet." Her voice softened, like she was trying to make it sound like a simple favor. I stayed quiet, staring at the floor, letting her words hang in the air. She kept going. "It's not about Sarah, I promise. This is about keeping our home. We can't do this without you." That's when it really hit me. Without me, their whole system fell apart. They didn't care about me because they loved me. They needed me because I held it all together. And now that I was no longer willing to do that, everything was crumbling. I said, "I have my own life now. I can't keep saving everyone else." Before she could say anything more, I ended the call. And for once, I didn't feel guilty. The following days were eerily quiet. No surprise visits, no more calls, not even a hint of guilt tripping. It felt strange, like standing in the eye of a storm, knowing something might still be coming, and it did. On Wednesday, Sarah showed up at my apartment. She didn't knock, she just unlocked the door and stormed in. I barely had time to stand before she was in my kitchen, flinging her purse down on the counter. "Do you know what you've done?" she yelled. I raised an eyebrow. "Nice to see you too. My mother is losing her mind, Dad's a wreck, and now I've got to clean up your mess because you decided to throw a tantrum." I crossed my arms, calm. "You mean because I decided to stop funding your lifestyle?" She rolled her eyes. "Don't be dramatic." "Oh, you mean like when you all left me behind at the airport and then acted like nothing happened? That wasn't what you think," she snapped. "We didn't know you'd be there. And besides, you always say it's fine. You always smile and say, 'It's family.'" "Not anymore," I said, my voice cool. Sarah took a deep breath and then said, "Look, you have to help them. You're punishing them because you're jealous." That actually made me laugh. Jealous? Of what, exactly? Because we had a vacation without you. Because they love me more. I shook my head, a tired smile on my face. "You really think this is about love?" "I think you like feeling important," she said. "You love being the hero." "Not anymore," I repeated. "I like being free." She stared at me, her expression slowly changing from anger to something like disbelief. Then she said softly, "So that's it? You're done with us? I'm done being used, I said. Sarah scoffed, grabbed her purse, and headed for the door. Don't come crawling back, she said. I chuckled. I won't. When she slammed the door, I felt something I hadn't in years. Relief. But I also knew it wasn't over. My parents wouldn't let it end this easily. They never did. The very next day, my dad called. Danny, he said, your mother and I were thinking maybe Sunday dinner? We could talk? I almost laughed out loud. That was always code for we need a favor. And sure enough, minutes later, another call came. This time, his tone was firm. You're acting childish, he said. I leaned back on my sofa. Funny, I'm the only one acting like an adult. You're making this difficult, he muttered. We're still your family. You mean the same family that left me at the airport? I asked. That's not fair. It's honest, I replied. There was a long pause. Then he said, your mother's been crying for days. She just wants things to go back to normal. And what does normal mean? I asked. Me paying all the bills while getting treated like an afterthought? That's not what we meant, he said. Then what did you mean, Dad? I asked. Because it sure felt like that. He sighed, but I didn't give him a chance to answer. Call me when you want to check in, because you care. Not because you need something. Then I hung up, and this time, I didn't wait for them to call back. Sometimes, taking care of yourself means letting others figure things out on their own. Do you think it's ever okay to stop helping family when they've gone too far? Let me know in the comments. Of course, Than. Here is part 3 of the story, with the language softened and smoothed for your 55+ audience, all while keeping the original plot and flow completely intact. Days passed, then a week. No calls. No unexpected knocks on the door. It was eerily quiet, and I was finally breathing easy. Then one afternoon, just before I sat down for lunch, my phone buzzed. It was Sarah, again. This time, she didn't even wait for me to say hello. I hope you're happy, she snapped. Because Mom and Dad, they're in deep trouble. I raised an eyebrow. Is that so? Yeah, she hissed. They're 2 months behind on the mortgage. The bank's already sent notices. There was no apology in her voice. No concern, just blame. And I suppose that's my fault? I asked calmly. Well, it wouldn't have happened if you hadn't stopped helping. I let out a slow breath. Sarah, I didn't tell them to spend recklessly. I didn't tell them to act like everything was fine when it wasn't. She didn't reply, just hung up. A few hours later, I got a message from Mom. Her voice cracked when she answered. Danny, I've heard from the bank. She didn't ask how I was doing. Didn't check in to see if I was all right. I'm scared, she said. We're about to lose the house. I sat quietly. I could feel her desperation through the phone. Then came the same line she always used, soft and pleading. Please, just this once. Help us this one last time. That one last time had been used more than a dozen times before. I closed my eyes. Mom, I've told you already. I'm not doing this anymore. There was a pause, then the switch, from sorrow to scorn. After all we've done for you, this is how you repay us? I let out a cold laugh. What have you done for me lately? Anything in the past 5 years? Have you ever called just to say hello? Just to ask how I am? Silence. Exactly, I continued. The only time my phone rings is when one of you needs something. Danny, she whispered. No, I said firmly. I'm done. I hung up. After that call, something shifted. The guilt that usually followed didn't. Not this time. A week went by, then another. And for the first time in years, I had money that stayed in my account. I wasn't covering someone else's power bill or school fees. I wasn't paying off credit cards I hadn't used. I got myself a new apartment, furnished it the way I liked. bought a proper coffee machine, the one I'd always wanted. And a few months later, I went on another trip, this time to Japan. It was the place I'd dreamed of visiting as a teenager, and now I was finally there. No guilt, no second thoughts, just me living my life, spending my own money on my own experiences. And it felt incredible. One evening, as I was scrolling through my phone, I came across a post. It was from one of Sarah's friends, a photo of Sarah and her husband, Mark, at dinner. The caption read, "Tough times don't last, but tough people do." Mark looked exhausted. Sarah was smiling, but her eyes were heavy. Curious, I clicked through to her profile. Gone were the beach pictures, the shopping hauls, the over-the-top birthday parties for her kids. It was a ghost town now. I was about to exit when a message popped up from Kelly, one of Sarah's oldest friends. "Hey, Danny," she wrote. "I don't know if I should be saying this, but things at home are a mess." I hesitated, fingers hovering over my phone. "Why are you telling me this?" I finally typed. "Because you deserve to know. You were the one holding it all together. And now that you're gone, it's all falling apart." Another message followed, this time a screenshot. It was from a private group chat, Sarah, and a few close friends. In it, Sarah had written, "He just sits there like he's better than us, watching us drown." Another line read, "I used all my savings to cover Mom and Dad's bills. Now Mark's furious. We can't keep going like this." Mark had replied, "This is what happens when you rely on Danny for too long. If he doesn't come back soon, I don't know what we're going to do." I stared at the screen for a long time, not out of sadness, but disbelief. Even now, they still thought I owed them something. A week later, I got a call from a strange number. I nearly didn't answer, but something nudged me to pick up. "Daniel," said the voice. It was my dad. "We need to talk." His tone was soft, but I could hear the weight behind it. "I know things got out of hand," he said, "but your mother, she's not well." I waited. "We're under a lot of pressure, son." I smiled faintly. "You always are, Dad." "It was just a vacation," he said suddenly. "You cut us out over a vacation." "No," I replied. I walked away from years of being used. "Can't we just put this behind us?" he asked. "Not when you still don't understand what you did." There was a pause, then quieter. "We were wrong." That was the first honest thing he'd said in years, but I wasn't ready to forgive. "Not yet." He sighed. "Just don't let this be the end, Danny." "I think it already is," I said. "There's strength in walking away, especially when staying means losing yourself." Have you ever seen someone's true colors only after you stepped back? I'd love to hear what you think. I didn't hear from Sarah after that. Not a word, not a message, not even a forwarded guilt trip from Mom. A month passed. Then, through a friend of a friend, I found out they had given up the house. My parents had moved into a smaller place, and Sarah and Mark had left their neighborhood behind too. They had no choice but to let go of the life they had once flaunted. The vacations, the shiny cars, the big holiday parties, all gone. They'd pretended for so long that they didn't need me, that they were smarter, more successful, more important. But without me, their house of cards came tumbling down, and for the first time in my life, I wasn't the one paying the price for their illusions. They were finally facing the reality of who they were without me to carry them. And I was free. No more constant pressure to pick up the phone. No more emergency wires. No more checking my account, wondering what was left after everyone else took their share. I wasn't angry anymore. I wasn't even hurt. I was just done. I started turning off notifications. I stopped checking for messages that never came. I stopped looking over my shoulder. Instead, I started looking forward. I had lived for them for so long that I'd forgotten what it meant to live for myself. Now, I was doing just that. A few months passed, and I booked another trip, this time to Greece, the one place I'd always dreamed of since I was a teenager. I walked through whitewashed towns on quiet hills, watched the sunset over the sea, and ate dinner alone under twinkling lights, listening to the soft strum of local music. I didn't feel lonely, I felt light, and that feeling stayed with me. Until one day, scrolling online, I stumbled onto a post that made me stop. It was a photo of Sarah and Mark, out to dinner, but the caption said something that caught my eye. Tough times reveal true strength. Mark's face was drawn, tired. Sarah was smiling, but it didn't reach her eyes. I looked at her the way you look at a stranger you once knew. I followed the tag back to Sarah's profile. Gone were the lavish photos, the birthday extravaganzas, the perfect captions. It was barren now, as if the life she once boasted about had quietly vanished. Then, a message popped up. It was Kelly again. Hey, Danny, I know we don't talk, but I just thought you should know they're not doing well. I hesitated. Why are you telling me this? I asked. Her reply was quick. Because I watched how much you gave, and I think they're finally realizing it. Moments later, another message. A screenshot from a group chat. Sarah was venting to her friends. I can't believe Danny just abandoned us. I spent everything keeping Mom and Dad afloat. Now Mark's furious, and I don't know what we're going to do. He says it's all my fault. He says I should have known better than to expect Danny to come back. Then Mark's message, this is what we get for depending on him. If he doesn't step in, I don't know how much longer we can do this. I stared at the screen. Even after everything, they still didn't understand. I wasn't the villain. I had been their lifeline. They just didn't realize it until I cut the rope. A week later, my phone rang. It was a private number. I answered, more out of curiosity than concern. Daniel, said my dad, his voice heavy. We need to talk. I didn't speak. He went on, trying to sound reasonable. It's your mother. She's not well. I stayed silent. We made mistakes, he said. But she's still your mother. I finally responded. You always say that when you need something. But where were you when I needed parents? He tried again. We can work this out. No, Dad, I said, my voice calm. You just want things to go back to how they were, and I don't. A long pause followed. Then he said it. You're really going to leave us behind? I let out a quiet breath. You already left me a long time ago. I just finally stopped waiting for you to come back. He was quiet. I could hear his breathing, but no more words came. Then, finally, the line went dead. That was the last conversation I ever had with him. I half expected Sarah to call next, but she didn't. Neither did Mom. They had all gone silent. Through a mutual acquaintance, I found out Sarah and Mark had sold their car, scaled back everything, and were now renting a small apartment. My parents had moved to a modest senior living complex. Nothing fancy. No more cruises. No more catered family dinners. Their world had shrunk. Mine had grown. And for the first time, I understood something. They didn't make me who I am. I did. I made my life. I built my stability. I gave my heart, and when they mistook it for a credit card, I took it back. I paused, sipping a warm coffee on my balcony, the morning sun just beginning to rise. I didn't miss them, and that was the most surprising part. I wasn't angry. I wasn't bitter. I was free. And for the first time in my adult life, I was living for me. Sometimes, letting go is the kindest thing you can do for yourself. Have you ever felt freer after walking away from people who never truly saw your worth? Tell me about it in the comments. As we move through life, many of us take on roles as caregivers, helpers, and providers, especially within our families. We do it out of love, out of duty, and often without ever asking for recognition. But sometimes those roles become traps when giving becomes expected rather than appreciated, and love is measured by what you can provide rather than who you are. It's easy to lose yourself in the process. This story reminds us of something deeply important. Boundaries are not betrayal. It's okay to say enough. It's okay to protect your peace, even from those you love. True family, true love, will never ask you to disappear for their comfort. For those of us who've lived a few more seasons, we know how heavy silent sacrifice can be. But we also know how sweet freedom feels when we finally choose ourselves. Have you ever reached a moment where you had to walk away for your own well-being? If this story reminded you of something personal, I invite you to share your thoughts or even your story in the comments below. You never know who else might need to hear it.